Welcome to Cosmic Communion. Hello, Cosmic Communion community. Welcome back to your favorite podcast. This conversation with Kodie and I was, truly a trip. As you'll hear in the podcast, I was feeling so in this Pisces spirit realm that it was almost hard for me to really communicate what I was feeling. The topic of 55 is of immense importance to humanity at this moment in time. I highly recommend, if you have not read it already, or even if you have, an invitation maybe to revisit the 55th gene key. If you're listening to this podcast, you are here to be aware of the shifts that we are moving through right now that Kodie and I touch on in this podcast, but there's so much information that we didn't touch on, and so I invite you to read the 55th gene key and feel free to reach out to Kodie and or me. We love having conversations about the major evolutionary shift cycle that we're moving through right now. And really, as we state in the podcast, desire to connect with more of our fractal, more of the people who are really here for this message at this time. Enjoy our conversation on 55. When I was really in it last fall, summer, those were some of the most ecstatic experiences I've ever had.
Yeah.
Truly the most pleasureful experiences, completely surrendering to the wave. There is such an exhilaration in that. There's freedom in that, right? That's the freedom. When we fight the wave, then we're feeling victimized by the wave.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Well, welcome 55. There she is. When I was watching this workshop with Eisen, he was talking about the water and how, and literally we started touching on it in 30, but now here in Bridge 55, we are officially submerged inside of the depths of Pisces season. And he was talking about the water from this lens of the wave versus the conduit. So we really begin to identify with this chaotic wave-like serpent motion, the chaos of it all. And really in the workshop, it was the water is actually just the conduit. It's the connective fluid of the information stream, right? Of consciousness. And so to your point, when we're surrendering, it's an ecstatic experience of receiving that information fully, not doubting it, allowing it to wash over us and become us. And that Pisces, baby, it's here. That's the juice. So what do you where does 55 take you?
This morning and thinking about it, I'm now that we're in Pisces, I feel like the gates leading up to Pisces, we were already starting to feel at a loss for words in communicating the frequency. And now I'm really where do you even begin with 55?
Right. Well, I feel like that's one of the qualities. The beginnings are the endings. This is something I was contemplating just last night, where our last water season was in Scorpio, right? Correct? Which is fixed water. We're entering the next season of water, which is mutable. It's shape-shifting. It's there's that kind of quality of transformation in and of it that is different from Scorpio.
Scorpio has the tenacity to stay in the darkness, to stay in that emotional experience
Yeah.
just as long as necessary for the transmutation to happen.
Mhm.
Whereas with Pisces, there is more of this, there's more movement, right? And it's a
Yeah.
mutable water sign, so there's more movement. So it's not really about like staying in the emotional experience. It's more about going there for the kind of transmutation process,
And, like,
um,
dancing with it.
and dancing with it totally.
The ability to move inside of that awareness, because Pisces is solar plexus season, so this is an awareness season. It's like becoming that, understanding it, like learning to allow this information stream, the conduit of the water season, to uh what's the word? It's like intelligence by osmosis, to just like allow us to be with that synesthetic nature of reality and trust that that information is what's coming forth through us, being born through us in the surrendering to the death process.
Yeah. I still like haven't quite wrapped my mind around since we started with 41. Because like this, right, this
Mm.
whole idea, I guess the difference between the astrological new year and the new year according to more of like the human design gene keys perspective is like in astrology, the new year begins with the spring equinox in Aries season.
Yep.
And what Ra and Richard are tuning into is that the new year actually begins in the dark, right? It begins in the depths of winter.
Yes.
And so I think what I would love to like ask ask you now is like, is Aquarius season and Pisces season, like, are these just these seasons where we're actually like not even on this plane anymore? Like the way that I'm kind of seeing it is it's like after Capricorn season, I don't know, and maybe it's even after Scorpio season. It's like we're not actually on Earth anymore. We're now moving through these elements in like the spirit world. I can't even really like articulate what I'm trying to get to, but it's like something that's not quite computing in my mind around like where are we right now, right? Like what is this transition?
I feel the essence of what you're describing here. Like I get, cuz I've felt that for months, and I think it is um I don't, I'm going to say this and it, my mind is definitely fighting it cuz who knows, but anyway, it's as if this is like the transpersonal season, right? So 1st through 6th is like the personal, and very much in the body and in the embodied experience of like the doing and the like manifest mattered existence. And that like from the 6th to the 12th we're really in that like spirit manipulation of form
Mm,
as well. And like, and it's a balance, it's always a balance between existing in both of those worlds, but it is more of a transpersonal season of seeing how our individual actions are affecting the collective nature of reality, how like our own tapestry of reality is weaving and upholding a reality outside of us.
damn, that really
How
resonates.
about that 55? So 55 is fire over thunder. I mean, speaking to this agitation that we're feeling, like 55 this week is going to be bringing that agitated charge with it. It's like we're in a water season, but this is like fire. So it's steamy. Like it's bringing this quality of like moving all of that around. And
Yeah.
so Pisces season is deeply transformational because it is where in the collective we are literally transforming our solar plexus. And so that fire is literally the impetus and the initiation of that transformation. And it this week we will be feeling the fire of that. We'll be feeling this this charge.
Yeah. Well, and like what's coming up now is thinking about the gates, like the gate that leads up to 55. So we just came out of 30, the clinging fire, right? And so it's almost like 30 was really priming us
Yeah.
for it's been building, and now it's like it's showtime. It's like it
It's
feels like it's
here.
almost been priming and like opening up, like massaging the solar plexus open so it can like drop all the way straight down into that truth that needs to be
Yes.
faced this season. And that, will depend, that will be different for every single person.
Yeah.
But this is the time of the year where we are having that kind of emotional reckoning in a sense. It's like, okay, what have you been avoiding that is keeping you in your victim narratives that is
Yeah.
ready to be offered to this fire, to the alchemical fire for transmutation, so you can quantum leap into freedom, into the Siddhic frequency of 55.
Yes.
There's I'm feeling just such at a loss for words because there's like almost so much to say.
Yeah.
And so I think what I would like to do is provide a little bit of context around 2027, and
Oh,
like
yes.
kind of like I feel like we need to go into that because we can't even really talk about 55, I feel, without talking about the great change, as Richard calls it.
Yeah.
From Ra's perspective, he calls it our entrance into the cross of the sleeping phoenix. And so we are moving into a new global cycle in January of 2027. And so we've been under the cross of planning since 1615, and we'll be moving into the cross of the sleeping phoenix in January of 2027. Um,
Mhm.
I don't want to go too deep into it because I feel like there's a whole other episode and like conversation that I would actually really love to have Allison join us for that conversation.
Yeah.
But just to give a little bit of an overview, Richard and Ra both speak of this time, but from very different kind of perspectives. Whereas Ra is like a little bit more kind of doomsday in his approach. Richard really is painting this as this like moment where humanity awakens to our
Yeah.
divinity and awakens to our power to liberate ourselves. And so, okay, how is 55 related to the Great Change? So, what has been shared in the Gene Keys and in human design is that the mutation that we are moving through is actually happening in the 55th gate gene key bridge. And this goes back to what we had mentioned, I believe, I think it was 49. But the solar plexus is the newest center to evolve in humanity. And so, this kind of mutation and evolution that's been taking place throughout humanity has been taking place in the solar plexus. And it's
Mhm.
evolving from being this motor center to being right now, I guess it's a motor and an awareness center. And essentially, what the prophecy says is that this is going to become our center of spirit awareness, and that the
Yeah.
children that are born after 2027, and arguably these children are already being born now. Many people are talking about the telepathy tapes right now, and this
Yeah.
future human, and so it's like these kids are actually already here.
Yes.
Um, but these kids are just going to be born aware of spirit. They're not going to have to go through this spiritual awakening process that we have had to go through. Um, and so, anyways, I feel like that was a bit of a roundabout way to say that, like, what does this mutation really mean? It means that, like, literally, there is going to be a new human that is being born through us. And so, Richard calls it Homo Sanctus, the sacred human.
Mm.
Raw calls them the raves. And again, like we'll probably record another episode and dive really deep into that. But I feel like that foundation needed to be kind of like laid for this conversation around 55.
I agree. And I think that something that I want to say to it is that like my way of relating to this information for so long, like I wasn't intrigued by the global cycle or like these prophecies when I first came into human design because it felt so it felt so foreign of an idea of like where do I fit into that, because it is such a like a collective nature of a thing, and I was really intrigued by the personal energetics of this system. But now I see, like, reading 55 really initiated me into understanding what is happening on the collective level that is very deeply personal, and how we can relate to it personally, how we can um, move with and be conduits of this mutation that is occurring through the collective in our own way. And so that like really for me that really brought it home, where instead of these two kind of these guys prophesying about, they're tapping into uh a program, right, that is currently happening right now, and that's so much larger than just we can even conceptualize, like on a day-to-day basis, I guess I would say. um but I feel like what I'm trying to get at here is that uh aside from the prophecies, which are codes and information that is, meant to be kind of, what's the word, like downloaded and tracked through our idea of a personal authority, to
Mm-hmm.
then find out where we fit inside of that. And reading Gene Key 55 really allowed me to own and reclaim my position inside of this mutation. Like, how is 55 working through me personally, and then also collectively? It like zoomed in and then zoomed out.
No, I actually, yeah, I I feel like that could even be a good place to really begin this conversation. Not that we didn't already begin it, but at least for me, I feel like my mind is like,
No, it's expanded out because it's so macro. Like the 55
yeah.
is so macro. And I think that was why reading, like I've tried to read the 55th Gene Key, the Dragonfly's Dream, so many different times. And finally, when I opened the book last Friday, it just like I felt this, it was the water conduit. It was like I was taking in that information and and there was a softening. There was like a osmosis again that was like happening between
Yeah.
me and my body. And I think it really speaks to this mutation that's occurring through our solar plexus. It's here now. Just like you said, the raves are here now. It's not like January 2027 the light, like the
They're
switch
gonna
gets
pop out of the
flipped.
vaginas.
Yeah, like that's not how mutation happens. It
Yeah.
occurs over, and it's probably been here since 19, there's so the great change occurs in three different waves. 1987 began this process. 2012 was the second point, and 2027 really ushers it in. And so probably since 1987, we've had this awareness in the collective on a much larger scale.
Yeah.
But it's such a macro energy to consider that I feel like for us to hold this conversation, invite people into it, it's like, how can we take that and like bring it in?
Yeah.
And I don't know if we can.
Yeah.
Like,
I really love the way that you describe the like, almost like the purpose or the function of the gene keys in human design is to help us orient to our role within this great change.
mhm.
And so, I felt this like immediate like lightning bolt awareness and knowing when I was reading the definitive book, and I just I don't even remember what it said. I just remembered reading 2027, and it was like it activated this latent memory in my DNA of what was to come and that
Wow.
I had a significant role to play in it. And so really that initial wave of awareness that came through for me was like, and then learning that I'm a projector, it's like I'm here to guide humanity through this major evolutionary shift.
Yeah.
And then what that looks like in more detail continues to reveal itself to me,
Yeah.
day by day. And I think this really lays at the foundation of our work, of what Kodie and I are not only doing here in Cosmic Communion, but doing in all of the projects that we're collaborating on. The desire underneath it, the mission underneath it is to support people in remembering who they are within this great change and why they're here, what role they came to play.
Yep.
And that if you're listening to this conversation, you came here to be a catalyst for this great awakening,
Yep.
for this transmutative process that humanity is going through, where we're being forced to really look at all of the ways that we are playing the victim in our life and liberating ourselves from those victim narratives so we can experience real freedom. That is like, this is what
Mm.
Richard says. It's like all of this, all underneath all of the gene keys is really just this desire to be free.
Yep.
And everybody has a different idea of what freedom looks like or feels like, but that is really the shared desire that, and coming from 30 again, right? Like transitioning from 30, like really helping us unearth those desires and get honest about those desires, those soul desires. And then 55 comes in, is like, okay, well, you want to experience that. Like we need to go all the way into the programming and the conditioned patterns of being and seeing that are preventing you from manifesting those desires in your life.
So Gene Key 55, the shadow of victimization, the gift of freedom, and the city of freedom.
Mhm.
Once you reach the gift, you've transcended victimization,
Yeah.
right? Like this is the one place in all of the 64 gene keys that the gift is the city.
It's like that quantum leap. Because so underneath like all of the shadows of all 64 is essentially victimization, right?
Mhm.
It's a pattern of conditioned belief that makes us feel victimized by our circumstances of life, which is really a forgetting that you planned all of this. You are the script writer, you are the main character, you are the director of your
Yep.
life. And so really it's just a forgetting of that. And yeah. I feel like do you feel weird?
No.
I feel so weird.
I think you're just like meeting your edge. Like you've quantum leaped so much in the past week. I mean, it's been astounding. I think like there's what I feel is like a momentum that your mind's trying to stop. And you
Yeah.
have to just keep rolling through it and trust these words.
Okay.
Cuz you're actually just you're still in the leap and you're still doing it. I think we're getting outside of the bounds of like what we thought was comfortable the past 6 episodes or whatever we've done so far, and we're moving into a different expression and iteration, and you just have to trust it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, in that case I just want to cry.
Then let it is so.
But I don't even know about what.
I feel like this is very relevant.
Yeah, I really feel like it's like I don't know if gravity is the right word, but like the importance of this moment.
Yeah.
Obviously, Kodie and I are moving through it, you know, in our own microcosm in really, really fucking huge ways. Um,
Yeah.
and it feels like opening up this like 55 is like connecting me to almost that like 13 empathy of like, wow. And there are millions and billions of people all over the planet who are experiencing this mutation in their life as well, in such like
Yeah.
huge, groundbreaking, like reality shifting ways. And that's so exciting in some ways. And also, there's so much grief, I think, that goes with this because I mean, this is what I've been talking
Mm.
about for years at this point. It's like we're witnessing death on every single level of our society right now. We've been witnessing that, you know, I think, or at least we've become aware of it since 2020, the last 7-year cycle before 2027. And um I tend to always like hold that knowing and that excitement amidst the death because I always see death as signs of new life. But I feel like I'm also like my old open solar plexus is tuning into like how scared people are
Oh, yeah.
because most people don't have this context of what we're going through. And so it seems like the end of the world.
Yeah.
And it is, right?
It is. Yeah.
But again, it's like the end of this world and the beginning of a new world, and, nobody knows what that will look like, you know? There are tons of
Mm.
prophecies about this coming age, but we don't know how it's gonna manifest, and for whatever reason I mean, the sun is moving into 55 tomorrow, so I feel like it really was this conversation that started to open that up, and I'm curious to see what unfolds this week. Um
Yeah.
But it's a lot. You know, it's a lot to process. It's a lot to be with. We're being asked to show up in a way that I don't think we ever have before to meet this moment. And yeah, I think that's why coming together and having these conversations and connecting with Fractal right now is literally more important than it's ever been. I feel like that's really what has come forward since we started recording these episodes is the importance of connecting the fractal right now, and
Yeah.
That's, like, Kodie and I's, like, purpose, right, to connect the fractal.
Yep.
That's really why we're even doing this podcast series if you really think about it,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
that's the intention underneath it.
There was something you were saying a little bit ago that made me want to kind of echo the energetic invitation inside of 55, which is speaking to what you're speaking to here, which is that we really have this deep desire to connect that fractal because we've seen the power of it in our own personal lives and being witnessed inside of the transformation that happens in our individual lives is literally the grounds of which the birth comes forward. And like it we can do that on our own, but the gravity and the weight of it can almost be too much to bear, that it doesn't make it like worth it enough to enter that initiation. It's like I'm going to be alone. I'm so tired of being alone.
Yeah.
And so if I don't have my sisters and my brothers holding my hand through this, I don't think that I want to go. I think that I would rather be with everybody else in the matrix. And I think that's still a beautiful thing. I think that's where we enter that softening of, because we do feel a divergence in the collective right now. We feel when we're with our brothers and sisters that are on our fractal who are accepting these initiations. And then we also see the world and the population that is not. And that's their role too. And I think that we can begin to soften our gaze upon that and like quit with the binary of it all, the good versus bad, the wrong versus right, the spiritual egotism of like I've chosen this path. No, this path chose you. You're just here because you were always going to be here. Remember that. And
Mm-hmm.
the all of us, every single one of us as living beings doesn't want to be alone in it anymore. We were never alone, right? We're waking up to that. We've got ourselves, but the reinforcement that connecting to your community and your fractal provides is paramount. It is sacred. It is so sacred. And I think like the other point that I was trying to get to that I kind of like went on a long tangent around is that I really believe that this podcast is a conduit and a connecting force to that fractal of consciousness. The people that are listening to this podcast are a part of this journey too. This
Yeah.
is the energetic invitation of cosmic communion, is to connect us all in our own microcosms in reality between time and space. Wow. Oh my God. Going from, okay, we went from like a depth to like a, like it was like we just went on the wave. Because now I'm feeling like giggly and like ecstatic.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm really happy that you like poked this open because I was feeling so much resistance. I was almost like, let's just record tomorrow. I can't do this right now.
Yeah. Hell no. Yeah.
Um, and it's just so funny because even this morning I was like, I don't think I really have anything to say about 55.
This is when I was reading 55, I was like, oh, now like I've been waking up to so many layers of who you are and like your mission. But I read 55 and I was like, oh, I get what Sarah's been talking about. Like, this is your shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do
Yeah.
know what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, so Kodie has 39 in her ascendant. So she's
Mhm.
39 rising, and I have 39.3 in my design moon.
Mhm.
And there's something about the design moon that feels like so connected to like the physical heart.
It's the center.
Yeah.
It's
And
the gravity around, like it is your gravitational pull of your reality. That's what the design moon is.
and I think thanks for saying it that way. I think Richard calls it like your attraction sphere, so that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
And now that we're saying this, I'm like, "Oh, yeah, people get pulled into my sphere when they're ready to be provoked awake."
Yeah.
And I feel like the journey that I've been on these last, since my Saturn return is really accepting that role, and that when you provoke people like for example, I had a relationship reading last week. She didn't know. She thought she was just coming to me for like a relationship reading. Before the reading, I pulled the death card and I was like, "Mhm."
Yeah.
And, there wasn't an invitation to like level at that level, but I know that there was a deeper level of truth that I provoked that maybe in a year I'll hear from her. Maybe I'll never hear from her again because she was like, after that reading, that's when my relationship ended. Like
Yeah.
that was the beginning of the end.
Yeah.
Um, but there's like a level of precision that's beginning to come out in this, and like
Yeah.
knowing the perfect moment to just like get in there, you know?
Yeah.
Like it's like
Yeah.
that 39, it just like it wants to like get into that solar plexus and like provoke that truth. And it's not pleasant, right?
Yeah.
It's not like a fun provocation typically. It's like I'm making you face the one truth that you've been avoiding for your whole life.
Well, it's Cancer and it's cardinal water. So where we're in mutable water right now, that's kind of like, woo, we're just dancing, no big deal. Transformation's happening. It's like a little softer. Cardinal water's like a jet stream in your face.
Ooh, I never really thought of it that way, but like, yeah, one of the key words for the cardinal signs is initiatory. It's an initiation.
It's an
An
initiation. Yep.
initiation into water, into your emotional body.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um and just I don't know, in having these conversations about 55 this last week, I'm really starting to see like, oh, this is what was underneath decadent death.
Yeah.
Like that's actually really what this was about.
Mhm.
Because it really like it really all comes down to this victim stuff.
Yeah.
Like, you know, the gene keys can be overwhelming. There's so much information. Oh my God, all these shadows, all these things. Like, if you're feeling overwhelmed, just bring it back to where are you playing the victim? And and when my teacher Francis had, you know, brought this to me, I'm like, oh, I'm not a victim. I'm an empowered woman. It's like, no,
Mhm.
bitch. You're still
Yeah.
playing the victim in all of these ways.
Yep.
Um, and yeah, we talked about it a little bit in the last episode, so I don't want to like go too much into it, but this feels like my job. This is my job to
This
make
is your
sure
job.
that everybody is playing their role in the great change, in this like collective awakening. My
Yep.
job is to make sure that everybody else is doing their job, right?
Yep.
Um and that involves holding space for death, because in order to really fully step into the role that you came here to play in this great change, you need the former idea of you identity does need to die.
Yep.
Um and anyways, I don't feel like I'm saying anything today.
You're
So
saying so much. There's
okay.
like a lot there no, there's a lot here. I think you just keep trusting it and we can cut out whatever you feel like is not relevant. Cuz everything that you're saying is like also kind of activating in me too, pulling different, it's like that is pulling up from my
Yeah,
48. That's like my 48, right? Like my depths are yeah, so
I think like I keep getting overwhelmed with the macro of it all.
yeah.
And so continuing to bring it back to like our micro experiences of how this has played out in our lives, I feel like will be more relatable for people or more
I
actionable in a sense.
I think it is 55 to a T. It's this frequency that we're talking about. It is the ability, and I think that this theme is going to be really played out inside of Pisces season. Expanding that solar plexus awareness and that nerve. It's also the constituting of the nervous system too. And so a lot of this, I feel like solar plexus binary stuff. So like we have touch and we have feeling, which to me is all about identifying edges. This is like edge work. Like where do I
Mm.
end and where is the information beginning? And so I think that that the thing that you're talking to, it's like, yeah, you're feeling this, the macro and the magnitude, and that is the guidance inside of 55 is like, how do we take the information that's coming in from that like macro meta experience and bring it and allow it to be the conduit back into our form. And then, okay, once we get to that point, what's the information? What's unfolding? Like, something you were saying that was really interesting to me that is divergent in our experiences with human design, and I think you can apply this in a templated sort of way. You zoned in on 2027 information. Like, that was the activating force behind your initiation into human design. For me, it was the energetics of human design. And that's information for us that helps us identify our role.
Yeah.
So these are macro systems that we're interacting with, but then there was a quality of that was like sticking out to us that is indicative of who we are, the role we're meant to play, and our divine purpose inside of it.
Okay, I'm really happy. I'm really happy that we're going in this direction now, because something that I wanted to pull out of you was this conversation that we started last night, and how Kodie, as the master of flow,
Yes.
this is what you do
This is what
in
I do.
being able to discern where there is stagnation in the field. Those are all of the places that we are not free. Those are all of
Yes.
the places where the victim lives, is in the stagnation.
Yep.
And so this is your role in the Great Awakening. This is the very like practical Virgo way
Mhm.
that you are
Mhm.
able to support people in identifying not only all of the places that the victim lives in your psyche, but in the body.
Yeah. Yep. The victim plays out in our body in these like inflammatory reactions. So like 55 is like fire over thunder, thunder over fire, I forget which composition. But it is so much about the meeting, again back to that solar plexus binary of like touch and feeling. It's the meeting of two worlds. Like, what do we know about shores? Shores is also solar plexus binary. It's the meeting of these places, the edges of these places. And so in the body, that shows up as inflammation, these inflammatory responses to, there's so many different levels of systems in our bodies, hormonal, the blood system, the digestive system, but that we encounter these inflammatory blocks or these stagnancies or these tension points in our literal physical form, and that does translate and expand out into the mental or the mental and emotional realms as well. Um, and the thing that we were talking about is that a way to combat that in a very like it is almost logical. There's like a very logical quality to it, which is like placing the witness upon it, the awareness. It's like seeing, seeing with a soft gaze, not
Mm.
allowing the judgment and the shame to run a loop through these processes of our body, mind, and our soul, but allowing the awareness to liberate and free those spaces of inflammation, stagnancy, tension in the form. And by like becoming aware, we can allow and trust our reality, our body, all of these different subtle layers of our existence to operate for us. Because flow is a birthright. Energetic flow is a birthright. And so once we accept that, reclaim that, it the rest is history.
Wow. Oh my god. This is so
Wow.
good.
I don't even know what I'm saying right now.
I want to go back to something you said.
Yeah.
Placing a soft gaze upon the resistance, the stagnation. That's literally all we have to do, is
That's it.
bear witness to the parts of us that we have been ignoring. And because we've been ignoring them, that is why they get inflamed, because they're trying to
Yes.
get our attention.
Yeah. It's like a beacon of light. Like, look here. Won't you look here? This is the fire of initiation. Yeah.
Oh,
Oh my god. Do
This
you
is
feel that?
really big.
Yeah. No, this is and see what you did? You provoked that. And now that's, like this is so fun. We've been talking about this a lot personally. It's like we're like really surrendering to our roles. And like we've had people drop in who have been like, wow, watching, like listening to you and Sarah, it's really cool that you guys are like snapping for each other and like and and that's what like but we're just playing our role. It's not an ego dance. We each have a purpose and we each have a frequency that we're here to express
And the more that I play my role, the more Kodie can play her role and vice versa.
and vice versa.
And that's it. It's like when we access this next layer of awareness of who we are and why we're here, it automatically activates that level of awareness in our fractal.
Yep.
And so it's constantly this game where we're just continuing to expand each other. And that's why this work is so hard, if not impossible, to do on your own,
Mm-hmm.
because it's not grounded. It's not grounded. I think the
Yeah.
fractal is what grounds the frequency, because you are accessing these levels of awareness that can make people go crazy. I think that's what creates psychosis, is
Yeah.
not being surrounded by your fractal is what leads to psychosis. You don't have people around you that are like, "No, you're not crazy."
Yeah.
And we're not meant to hold that much power on our own.
Yeah.
And so our circuits get fried.
Yeah. Like it's an overheating of the system because then it's cycling this expression of power is meant to be shared. It's meant to travel along our fractals and it's meant to be exchanged with our reality. And when we keep that all inside, we're inflaming. We're creating more tension in our internal reality that is then in disharmony with our external experience. And so then that power gets like imploded. It
Yeah.
it like it implodes. It's energetic miscarriage.
Mm.
And yeah, I think well, there was one thing that when I was listening to you, I was like, we're freeing each other. We're freeing each other. And so that's back to this 55, that that victimization, that victim that victimization, that energy, that quality is an implosion of energy into itself, upon itself, creating that tension point, that inflammatory point. And when we're with others exchanging, it's like what I've experienced with you and with our fractal and our community. It's like I could be saying something so like off the walls, bizarre, crazy. I could be like in my shadow. I could be really in the depths. And what is being held is frequency. Like the words are besides the point because those people know who you are and know that you're going through a human process. So it's still freeing. It's a freeing of that expression and of that energy out and like witnessing each other in the humanity.
And there's an element of truth in all of it. And I think that's part of what I'm able to really hear. So much
Yes.
of my circuitry is individual, the 39 is acoustic. It's like I can hear what's underneath that distortion that's wanting to be
Yes.
liberated.
Yes.
And so it's like there's these parts where like, "Oh, I don't wanna like, oh, sorry, I'm like sharing this like shadow thing or whatever." It's like, no, you actually need to share that because there's something underneath it that's wanting to be seen and expressed and liberated from that shadow.
Yeah.
And so this goes back to what Richard says about like the city is hiding in the shadow. If we're avoiding the shadow, then we're never gonna get to the city.
Exactly.
Um, and I just like I love what is making itself known to us through the way that like we're kind of dancing together in our different roles, like kind of what we were getting into last night, which I feel like I'm just like there's so many things, but like one of the things that was coming forward when you were speaking was like really seeing 41, 19, 13, 49, 30, how all of those frequencies are really preparing us for this moment.
Yep.
Um and we have so many of the like I think together we have every single one of these gates.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do. Because you have 30 in
Besides
Lilith,
49.
besides 49, you're right. But we both have the 19. Um Anyways, what I wanted to say was like kind of what was coming forward last night around these like very complementary roles that we play in catalyzing and holding space for people's liberation,
Yeah.
and like this holding space for people to free themselves.
Yeah.
And this like where now it's coming forward is this like Virgo like focus on the body and like where these things are living in the body, and me through this kind of like I don't know, whatever it is that I do.
So much.
Still don't know.
To be determined. Or
I don't think
it's
I
not even determined, it's like you just do it, and we know you're doing it. You
yeah,
know what I
and that
mean?
was
It's
something we
so
were
much.
talking about last week, like, when you're, like, really, like, doing, like, your thing, you can't see it because it's actually and there's, like, a protective mechanism, like, it's being protected from
Yes.
being interfered with by the mind, that's why you can't see it.
It's a channel.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so it's like when I'm being the most impactful, I feel like I'm not doing anything.
Yes. It's that flow state.
Yeah.
It's a flow state because you are in your channel, you're in your medicine. And, like, yeah, I loved when we were saying that. It was like that was like a truth. We are like, "Oh, we're not meant to know these things about ourselves." Our fractal and our community
Yes.
sees that in us when we're doing it.
Yeah.
Oh my god, I love this conversation so much.
So good.
So good. Um, oh, the thing that I wanted to say to that is becoming really clear to me though is to get to a place, we're kind of heeding our own personal initiations and claiming our roles inside of like uh freeing seeing that we have a role of facilitating freedom in other people, but really what got us to that moment of recognition within ourselves is doing that for ourselves.
Mhm.
And I wanted to because this podcast and this transmission, this episode is a reminder to take it back home to yourself. Like that is how we get to these points of self-initiation. That is how we connect to our communities and to the people we're meant to live these dreams alongside of. Is like we're seeing very clearly our role inside of that, but I couldn't see it until I was a lot, engaging with my own sense of freedom, my own self-liberation, and
Absolutely.
claiming that.
Mhm.
It's a continued process.
And you free others by freeing yourself.
Point
That's
blank.
it.
Yep. Totally.
Because then you're holding the frequency of freedom.
Yeah.
And that frequency is what creates the momentum for the people around you to harmonize to you. That's really all that you're doing is like once you've freed yourself and you're living at that frequency, you're like this light that all of the moths can kind of come to, not to die. Well, I guess you are dying actually, to die and then be
You are
reborn
dying.
so you
Yeah.
can like vibrate at that frequency.
Which is bringing us back into the idea that this is individual circuitry. And that's what individual circuitry does. It empowers by being in its essence. It's not we're not doing anything for the sake of the other, like
Mhm.
at the risk of ourselves. We're doing it because we feel a call to release ourselves from the victim program.
Mhm.
And it is, yeah, when we do that, we become, just like you're saying, we become that beacon of light for those around us. I'm mind blown.
Yeah.
Wow. Pisces season. I
Yeah.
feel like I'm understanding my Pisces cuz I my sun is in Virgo, so I'm seeing like that sun earth relationship here really clearly. That more like mystical essence of the design, or sorry, my personality earth in 63. I'm like, "Oh, okay. I see."
Mm-hmm. And I love that what catches you on the other side of the 55 is the community. It's 37.
Mhm. Yes. Yeah, oh my god.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like the fractal is what catches you on the other side
Mm.
of that.
It's like it's like something about that loneliness that we were speaking to earlier. It's like we're so we innately know that we belong to one another. And so it's like it goes against our human nature to like be in that lonely, separated self, or that self, also that the fear around that self initiatory process, because it
Mhm.
feels very lonely. But it's like trusting that when I go into this, the community is then for like comes forward. Then my
Mhm.
community can find me because I am now a beacon of the frequency that I'm meant to be in relationship with.
Mm.
Holy crap.
Yes.
Wow. Wow.
So good. And then on the other side of that is 63, right? Truth.
The truth.
And then once you connect with your fractal, you connect with the truth. The
And
truth of who you are.
the paradox that truth is inside of the paradox that like in community we find ourselves, and in finding ourselves we find community, like, you know, that edge between, I feel like that's very Virgo Pisces axis coded as well, where it's like that boundary that exists but is fluid, you know, that is
Mhm.
like there is definitely a boundary, but we're all connected. um wow.
This is weird.
What?
I don't know, just like whatever this feeling is very like I don't know. I think like
Explain it to me, because I have been having a surreal experience all morning of like I feel like I'm full of water. Like I feel like I'm a wave today.
I think maybe what was happening earlier is like I'm feeling the immensity of the water and I'm like trying to stay above water
Mm,
because otherwise
you
like
better tread it.
I literally wouldn't even be available for this conversation,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Um but I don't know, I don't feel like it's weird though cuz I don't feel like personally emotional about anything. I don't know.
Mm.
I don't really know. I'm gonna have to just move through the day.
What house
I
is
think I
Pisces
feel
in?
very
What?
Pisces is my 6th house.
Oh.
I feel like I feel very, like, in the spirit realm,
Yeah.
and it's more that actually than the emotional, so I'm like that's why I'm having a hard time, like, relating to, like, words and stuff, is
Yeah.
I'm like I feel like I'm, like, floating above everything and, like, in the place where we're not really talking because 'cause we're just all one and communicating through fractal
Yeah.
consciousness. Um, but there was definitely, like, this I feel like the agitation has kind of released itself, but when I first sat down, I was feeling this, like, tugging of the mind,
Yeah.
you know?
I felt
Um,
you. Like I feel like I felt you release though. Like at some point in there it was just like surrender. I wonder too if like Pisces will really just be that kind of initiation for you since it is 6th house and it is like it's Virgo Pisces for you, right? Like it's that
Yeah.
like Virgo and Pisces together. Like what does it mean to be like structured inside of the ethereal spiritual plane?
And that being like my work.
That's your yeah, like
Such a cosmic mind fuck about being a Libra rising. It's like
mm,
having this like, yeah, being just extra aware of like the paradox and the duality.
yeah.
The way that I am here to work is the opposite of what we know of work.
I just read this morning. I read Paradox. I pulled 6 and I pulled 23. So I
Mm.
pulled Paradox and I pulled Partnerism
Wait,
and
from Yin mysticism?
from Yin Mysticism.
Paradox.
And
Oh, partnerism. That's such a good one.
that's such a good one. And in some ways feels like really relevant to you. I was like in this like keeps coming up like when I'm having conversations about heavenly bodies and stuff. I'm like I keep like wanting to call you like I keep resisting calling you my business partner because you're my partner. But then I'm like, it's I like then it's gonna be confusing, you know what I mean? I'm like, you're like my life, you're like one of my life partners.
There's no
And
distinction
so
between life and business though, right?
that's like this paradox thing that's like this like fluid thing that's like happening too. And I feel like it's like a reflection. It's happening for you as well. Maybe not it's specifically and I think very much in a different way for you, but like the so what I was gonna say is paradox comes right before Heyoka. And
Mm.
Heyoka is the embodied experience of paradox. And so I feel like you
Mm.
are very Heyoka. You're very Heyoka. Like
Interesting.
I thought that this morning. Like I was like, "Oh, like Sarah's Heyoka." And I wonder like what that would be to like apply that to projectors just or non-sacrals. Like I think non-sacrals are very like an embodiment of Heyoka as well.
That's
And
so interesting.
then the partnerism part of it is like yeah, like the dance between me versus you, you know, like I don't and
It's
just
the
also seeing
synarchy.
it's the synarchy and like seeing all kind of like the major relationships in my life that I am partnering with. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Luna brought it up, like, I don't know, maybe a couple months ago that, we're in a sacred union, you know? I think
Yeah.
that's just, like, you and I are
Yeah.
in a sacred union, like,
Yeah.
it's 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 really cool to see how much my relationship to even what that word means and love, how much it's just expanded. It feels like all of the, like, barriers and limitations and boxes that I used to have around love and partnership really disintegrated, I feel, when the North Node was transiting 25 in particular.
Mhm.
Like, it really, like, broke that open, and now I'm just like we've talked about it in other episodes, like, I have more intimate relationships than I've ever had in my life, and I am I don't have anybody that I'm having sex with.
You're gonna need to fix that.
Although I do keep pulling the kiss, and I pulled lovers, so
So he's coming.
I don't the thing is, like, I'm now at the point where I'm like, I don't really care because I feel
Yeah.
so held and nourished and, like, there's no void. I don't have any void when it comes to love and
Yeah.
intimacy. Like, I feel so content, um, and, like,
I
I know
think
that he's out there and he's coming, and I'm, like, in no rush.
well, I was actually gonna say, like, I remember when you were still married to Drew or, like, you were going through the process. It was kinda that time frame where I came to, like, the mushroom journey, and you were, like, essentially saying, like, "I know, like, my partner will be, like" being a physical gap and separation between you and your lover, like whoever that person is, like that you'll be like making love to your work
Yeah.
consistently, and that like the lover will just be kind of like a compliment, like you know that they're there, you can have them when you like, but they're that you would be living kind of like your own life. Yeah.
There is something about this like relationship to the divine masculine that I feel I am receiving through actualizing this work, this like soul work.
Mhm.
And that is really like that's really what I was looking for. And I needed to like give that to myself before I would really be ready to receive like an external manifestation of the divine masculine. And and the other thing actually that I remember from one of Sister Shanti's astrology classes was that she said, you know, the 6th house comes before the 7th house. You got to get your work in order before being ready to receive your partner. And
Wow.
that
Yeah.
really stuck with me. That felt really true for me. Otherwise, I feel like I would just get lost in the partner in their direction, you know? And now I feel like I'm just getting so clear on my role and my work, and it's like really manifesting in the like material plane now. So then when the other person comes in, it's like, do you fit into this life or do you not? You know?
Mhm.
Can you harmonize with what we're doing here or not? And
Yeah.
that's not up for negotiation. Like I'm solid in this.
So, really, like, the 6th house is, like, the pinnacle of queendom. Like, we're, like, built 1st through 6th, we're, like, building the queen like, this is, it feels like this is, like, tying up all the ends or something, that there really is quite, like, a completion happening on this, like, last leg of the journey of inner work, and that we're entering, like, a new realm of inner work that is also embodying our actual work into the world.
Mhm.
And this masculine thing is helping us to step into that and know when to bring our own inner king forward through our work.
Totally.
Wow.
I think when I had said that to you before, there was some wounding and even like it was I was still like working through the like I have to do everything myself
Mm.
thing
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and and a little bit of disbelief
Yeah.
that that my man is like out there.
I yes, 1000%. And the only quality of it that stuck out to me in retelling it is that your work being in your work is, like, paramount
No, no, no.
to that.
It is like the
It's the
most
thing.
important thing to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas for a lot of women, you know, finding the partner is the most important thing. That's not true for me. Like the work
Yeah.
is more important than anything.
Yep.
And because the work is more important than anything, that's why the fractal is more important than anything to me because the work doesn't happen without the fractal.
Yeah.
They're one and the same actually.
Yeah.
um and so I just know now that like we've created this like synchronous field. The person will either harmonize to the field or will get spun out. And so it's gonna be very easy for
Yes.
me. It's like, this is what we're doing. Because it's so I think just being a projector, it's so easy to get lost in a partner and get lost on their trajectory. I'll just get sucked into their movie. And I have learned that lesson now a few times. And the reason that I was able to get sucked out is because I wasn't fully committed and devoted to my thing, right? Like I like
Mhm.
I didn't have that. I think it is that relationship with my own inner masculine because it's not that I wasn't devoted like spiritually, but it's like I wasn't doing the things in the material to ground that devotion. It was more of like a
Yeah.
getting stuck a little bit in the 41 fantasy of like just so focused on the dream but not actually taking the action steps to
Yeah.
bring that into the material. And I think that's what's different, especially like since we've started this podcast, since now launching Seed Sounds, like the
Mhm.
containment is here. Um,
Yeah.
and that is what is grounding me. That was the other thing I was reflecting on with my friend the other day, is like realizing how much committing to cosmic communion has had these ripple effects throughout my life.
Yeah.
Like it's like showing up and staying like devoted and committed to this thing every week has unlocked this like energy for all of these other things in my life. And
Yeah.
I think that's like what's so cool is like we were talking about before, it's like it's not even really about like yeah, we love like talking about these things, but like there's so much else happening through this. It's not
Yeah.
even like really about the podcast, you know? It's like
Yes.
this podcast is brought to you by Seed Sounds. You can visit our website to dive into our services as well as our creative memberships that we're offering through Seed Sounds. The Creative Commons is a bi-weekly incubator for creatives who are seeking community, inspiration, reflection, support, and accountability in their creative process. So this is a space where we can come and bring our works in progress and really receive that support from the community to help us move these projects along. We also have another tier that includes everything in Creative Commons, as well as our Creative Crucible methodology, which orients you to the season of creativity that you are in and provides one-on-one support from both me and Luna throughout your creative process. This is a great way to get a taste of our creative partnerships offerings. In addition, we'll be sending out our bi-weekly digest to our subscribers, showcasing creators in our community, as well as an energetic forecast for the upcoming season to help you orient your creative process to the frequencies that we are receiving from the stars above.